make the decision and have your back on it.
Welcome to Leaders of the West, a podcast for innovators and changemakers. I'm your host, Jessie Jarvis, the founder of the West, and I'm sitting down with agriculturalists, entrepreneurs, executives, and everyone in between with the goal of digging into the strategies, mindsets, and lessons that have been crucial to the success of Ag and Western. Whether you're carrying on the next generation of your family's operation, starting something from scratch, or determined to climb up the leadership ladder, we're going to inspire you to continue to dream big, growing not just you, but the future of agriculture and Western as a whole. Let's go. Have you ever opened up an old resume and laughed at what you found? I did that the other day. I found one from years ago and it looked like it was a middle school essay. It was too wordy. It didn't have great structure. It was more than a page and it had zero personality. And I remember thinking at the time, this is the greatest resume that I've ever created. And now looking back, it's probably not a surprise that I didn't get called back from that position. Most of us start out that way. We throw words on paper, hoping that they're going to stick. But here's the thing that I have learned after seeing thousands of resumes across my desk. And that is that good people don't get interviews just because they're qualified. They get them because they know how to show that they're qualified. And that is exactly why we made a little guide called 10 resume mistakes that could cost you the job and how to fix them. It's simple, it's free, and it's all the stuff that I wish somebody would have told me back when I was trying to figure out how to get noticed without sounding like a robot. So if you are in the middle of a job hunt or you just want to be ready for whatever comes next and you know that it's been a while since you've spruced up that resume, you can grab that free guide at the link that's here in the bottom of our show notes. Trust me, you guys, your future self is going to thank you. Welcome to today's episode. Okay, you guys, I'm going to level with you. How many of you feel like you have a hard time making decisions? Not because you don't care or not because you're not capable, but because you are overthinking, you're waiting for more information, you're trying to make the perfect call and the right decision, or you're kind of stuck in analysis paralysis because you feel like you don't have all of the adequate information in order to make a decision. I see this all the time, and I will tell you guys, it is honestly one of my biggest frustrations, or what do we call those, pet peeves, because indecision tends to cause far more damage than a wrong decision ever will. And today, my guest, Kacee Bohle, and I are going to walk you guys through how to become more confident in decision-making. We're going to really break down the decision-making process, especially when things feel uncertain, how best to do your homework to make the call, and then how to own the call. And all of that obviously then leads to creating and building confidence around decision-making. And then obviously, sometimes we make the wrong decisions. So how can you move forward out of making the wrong decision and kind of redirect to the correct one? So I am so excited for you guys to get to listen into this conversation. It is an incredible one. Kacee is a true visionary in what it is that she is doing with AgriMinds, and you guys are in for a real treat. So let's not wait anymore. Let's get right to this episode. Welcome to the show, Kacee Bohle. Kacee, I am really looking forward to this conversation. It is something that I feel so deeply passionate about, the topic that we are going to discuss today. And it's something that we've kind of talked about at length. But before we get to all of that, you are we're just going to call you the queen behind AgriMinds. I would consider you, if I was giving you your bio, I would say that you are an executive leadership and business coach within the agriculture space. But how did you get started in all of that? Is that the same thing that you would say about yourself?
I've never considered myself a queen, but I like the way that rolled off your tongue. So let's go with that.
Hey, I love it.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me on here. And secondly, if I were to describe what I do, I think you're right. I'm careful about the lingo that I use because I don't know if our industry accepts terminology the way that it's labeled in certifications, right? For example, I've got a couple of different certifications. One of them is I am a certified personal and executive coach through the Positive Psychology Institute. And I think when farmers or ranchers hear that, they're like, what the heck does that even mean? Like, Or are you going to like look at my brain and see how I act? So I'm careful about using positive psychology. And I also have a certification in leadership development. And even then, farmers and ranchers are sometimes like, well, if this is a farm, this is an operation, we have cattle. I don't know if leadership is like, that's too corporate of a lingo, right? So what I say to people is, I just help people who are feeling stuck, burnt out, not really confident in what they're doing, and build up their confidence, help them get unstuck, help them relieve some of that burnout and be proactive, communicate better with their teams, with their spouses, with their families. So I try to not dumb it down, but really use plain language because I don't want there to be any misinterpretation as to what I do.
Right. And to make people feel like you are finding them where they are at. Even when I describe you as an executive leadership and business coach, there are a number of farmers and ranchers, owners of their businesses, or even ag business owners, right? You don't have to be on an operation. But if you were to ask them, are you an executive? No, I'm not an executive. But they own the business. They are the CEO of their business. They are the chief executive officer of their business, but they wouldn't see themselves as an executive.
Yeah.
So I think that is definitely very interesting, isn't it?
It is. And I'm hoping that one day we kind of cross over the hurdle of the terminology, right? Like if I were to say life coach for people in ag, even that would have a stigma to it. And they'd be like, I'm not that broken. Like I'm not that
Yeah, I don't need
lost
a
in
life
my
coach.
journey. Yeah, I'm not a life coach, but I mean, that's kind of what I do is I help people with their life. Like I don't have a specific certification in life coaching. That's why I always say it's kind of tricky to give myself a title. AgriMinds is the name of my company. And I think that is pretty clear of like people with an ag who have stuff going on in their mind, whether it's mindset, whether it's confidence, whether it's whatever. AgriMinds is kind of the terminology I like to just go around.
So before we get into all of that, let's do one, what is AgriMinds? But two, how did you get into this? There's not a ton of people who have the certifications that you do who really focus themselves, their work, their businesses on this very important element. So how were you interested in this and how did AgriMinds come to be?
Yeah. So I heard this quote one time that said the best person that you're positioned to serve is your past self. And I say this all the time. Anytime somebody asks me, they're like, how'd you get here? It's like, well, I needed this. This is something that I was struggling with. I was in corporate America for the majority of my years. I grew up on a farm and I didn't really have anybody to talk to that one understood what it was like to be in my position of being the farmer's daughter, maybe coming home to the farm one day, but also needing to go and get a real job that pays steady income in the meantime, not lose sight of either, but then also having kids in the mix and traveling for a living. I didn't have anybody to talk to about this. And it seemed like a lot of the mentors or suggested people that I go talk to about this were not quite going through or had gone through what I was looking for. Like, oh, you should go talk to so and so. She's probably 20 years older than you. She's been in ag. She's done sales. She gets that. And I'm like, one, she doesn't have kids though. Two, 20 years ahead of me doesn't understand what I'm going through right now. Like, I appreciate that, but there are things that you just don't get. And I think I was putting an expectation out there that might have been a little unrealistic of like trying to find this perfect person that can help me with these answers. And so I started going through all these different leadership and personal development programs just for my own sake, because I'm like, I'm missing something. So I was reading all the books, listening to all the podcasts about leadership, listening to all the audio books and podcasts and anything I could get my hands on, whether it was YouTube or shorts on LinkedIn, whatever. And I was just trying to get an answer of like, what do I do? How do I handle this? What conversation do I need to have about that? Am I doing this wrong? Like, should I feel guilty about this? Should I just let that go? And I couldn't find the answer. And as I was going through all of these different programs, I realized a couple of things. One, nobody should be telling me the answer. And that was really difficult for me to swallow because I just really wanted somebody to tell me what to do. When actually what I needed was somebody to ask me questions to help me figure out what I wanted to do. And that's the difference between a mentor and a coach. And so when I realized that there could be somebody out there that didn't tell me their opinion, but actually just took the time to really understand where I was coming from and guide me to help me find my answer, it was the game changer because, I did take their advice and it didn't work out, or I did listen to their opinion and I really got pissed off at them because I'm like, why would you tell me to do that? That's not what I should have done. And so there was a big difference between a mentor and a coach. And when I discovered what a coach was, I was like, this is so helpful. But they didn't understand the intricacies of agriculture. And so what I did after I went through all of these different training programs and certifications just for my own sake, I realized there was a big gap for the people in agriculture. So I took all of that information and tailored it and kind of like pick and chose my favorite parts and tailored it to the agriculture industry using ag jargon, if you will. And so the very first thing that I ever did with this information was I kind of put together a 12-week mastermind/coaching program, which is now called AgriMinds Live. And it takes all of my favorite frameworks, all of my favorite tools and resources that I've come across over the years, and I've slimmed it down, simplified it, and applied it to the agriculture industry. And so that's what I wish that I had growing up and throughout my career. And so my job, or I guess my service, my purpose these days is to help other people find those types of tools and resources and apply it to both their personal and their professional lives.
You work with a very wide range of people, which is one of the reasons that I am really looking forward to the topic decision making. You and I have both seen a lot of people, whether it's family, friends, business professionals, what have you, have a serious inability to make decisions, whether they are small decisions, whether they are big decisions. And honestly, that is one of my biggest frustrations in life. Even my husband and I are now very much, just because we are around certain people who have a very difficult time making decisions. They just analyze and analyze and analyze from 1,000 different angles, and they don't ever actually make any forward movement or momentum. That my husband and I are very, very focused on how can we be people who we strategically analyze this, we make a decision, we move forward with our decision. If it was the wrong decision, we're going to get ourselves out of said decision, but we just feel very confident in our decision making. But here's how I want to frame this, because an inability to take action or to make decision, I honestly think it's one of the most crippling things, because it impacts you from a number of different ways, right? Whether it's decisions in business, and then that makes you struggle with decisions in parenting or decisions in relationships. Like, it is something that really does kind of go into everything. So why do you think people have a hard time with decision making? Have we always had that? Is it just something new because there's more information out there, so we have more to analyze? Like, where is the root problem coming from?
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head with that. Is there is a lot of information out there that we in past years, and I say we, I mean humans collectively, we didn't have access to all these different opinions, all these different methods. Back in the day, we did do what our dads and our grandparents did when we're talking about the farm, right? Like, those were the practices that worked. And so for those who don't know, we homeschool. And one of the studies that my son and I just wrapped up was called Living Off the Land. And it was really cool to hear about how people who traveled from the East to the West back in pioneer pilgrim days, they had to survive based off of what other people taught them, right? Like, that's all they knew. They only knew what the people right before them had experienced. And as they had a couple of years under their belt, they realized, okay, here's how I can tailor or tweak this to make sense for this particular plot of land, for my family size, for this season of the year. And then, as they started to connect with neighbors, they're swapping ideas and recipes and things like that. And so you have to remember, like, they only knew what they only knew. So I think the analysis paralysis that many people struggle with these days is due to lack of one, confidence in your decisions, but also an abundance of information. And so there's this internal tug of war happening all the time of, but here's what I think my intuition and my gut is telling me, but here's what all this information outside of me is telling me. And so there's this internal conflict all the time. And that's exactly why I'm doing an entire session on problem solving at the summit, is because, like, let's just get back to the basics. Why are you stuck? Let's get to the root of it. That's step 3. But before we even get to that is like, what's the actual thing you're trying to solve here? And sometimes we try to solve stuff that doesn't need to be solved. And so I think we have to remember
Oh,
that too, of like,
absolutely.
yeah, why is this something that needs to be solved, or is this actually fine? And I think we skip steps 1 and 2 and we just go to, what's the solution here? What's the root of this thing? And it's like, well, hang on. You forgot these other steps here. And then sometimes we stop, we just skip all the way to the end and we find a solution before we've ever analyzed what are some of our options here. And so there is a flow, these steps to decision making that can help you. And when you do that and you have the confidence in knowing, here's the facts, here's my feelings, the why behind it all, right? Then you'll be able to move through what we call the workflow of problem solving.
And there's definitely a big difference between being informed and drowning in information. I've seen this a number of times. Obviously, I've done it myself. If I'm looking for something new and I go to Google, well, the first 3 articles can be conflicting information of one another. So then it does kind of leave you with a, like, okay, well, I just read all of this, but now this is telling me this is wrong and I don't know which information is right. So how do you help somebody find that balance between being informed and then drowning themselves in information?
Yeah, that's such a good question. And I think that there can be too much information, but I think at some point you just have to decide, right? Like, here's what I do know. Here's the deadline of when I need to make this decision. Give yourself the deadline and move forward, because tomorrow you're going to get even more information. Every single day, we are gathering new information. Something has changed today that wasn't there yesterday. And so if it's really important to you, it's really something that needs to be decided, you just have to give yourself the deadline to move forward of, okay, I'm going to give myself maybe 15 minutes to stew on this, or I'm going to give myself a month to stew on this, whatever that looks like for you, right? Because I think there's no cookie cutter answer here. But I think giving yourself the deadline of saying, okay, I'm going to go give myself the time to stew, to panic, to overthink, to overanalyze. But after that time is up, based off of the amount of information I have, what's my decision? And I don't think there's ever a right or wrong. And I think that that's what a lot of people get stuck on or hung up on, is this might be the wrong answer and I'm going to have regret, or I'm going to have FOMO, or this may never come up again. So I don't want to move yet because what if? And there's always going to be that. And I don't think that there is a wrong answer. You chose the right answer at that moment based off of the information that you had. And tomorrow, if it's new information that told you it should have been this other thing, then you adjust accordingly.
I also think, to a degree, and I don't want this to get taken out of context by any means, but bad decisions are actually good decisions. Now, I'm not saying like make bad decisions of like, let's go get hooked on drugs or things like that. Like, no, those are definitely not good decisions. But what teaches you more, to a degree, if I make a decision that maybe wasn't right, I'm going to find a way to get myself out of whatever it was. So in theory, I learn, to a degree, a little bit more that way, so that then I have that information, because I'm a sponge and I don't ever lose the information. It's not like, once I've done it once, I have that with me for life. And then I can kind of go on with my experience thinking, okay, last time I did this and that wasn't right. But because I solved it, 1, I'm more confident in myself to make better decisions. But 2, I actually probably learned a little bit more from that than I would have if I made like the easy decision or the good decision, whatever that was. And again, you're right. What is my decision today on something is different than what it is tomorrow and what it is the next day. So I think there's a very fine line there. Like, we get so worried about being perfect. Like, we always have to make the right decision. But again, your life is very unique. The right decision for you is not going to be the right decision for somebody else, or for whatever situation it is. And so I think that we kind of have to give ourselves a little bit more credit than we do.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And I always hear action creates clarity. Like you won't know until you start going, right? Like you can look at a pool and say, I don't know if the water's hot or cold. You have to dip your toe in to get a little bit more information, right? And I think it was Coach Kaya. I can't think of her last name now. It used to be Twisselman. But I remember one time, like 3 or 4 years ago, she posted something about like climbing a mountain, and it may be a foggy mountain, and every single step, like you can only see the first one right in front of you. But as you go, you'll get clearer vision of the next step. But you're not going to see steps 5 and 6 until you've taken 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So you need to take the step. You need to take some sort of action in order to get that clarity.
I also love what you say about making a deadline, like a hard deadline, and sticking to it. I am a firm believer in you are going to fit the container that you give yourself. So if you tell yourself, okay, I have to make a decision by next month, you are not going to make a decision until day 30. That is just how we are all wired.
Hmm.
If you say, I need to make a decision by tomorrow, you are going to do all of the same information gathering and you're going to be able to make a decision by tomorrow. So that is maybe my personal opinion on that. I love the idea of making a decision by a deadline. Don't give yourself too much time. You can still make a very solid decision in a shorter window because again, I think that you can, if you lengthen that out too long, it's just like all of us, right? Like if somebody gives us a task or homework and okay, you can turn it in next week. How many of you are actually going to turn it in on the deadline knowing that I could just go home tonight and do it and turn it in the next day? Like nobody does that.
Yeah, yeah. No, I totally agree with you. And also having an accountability partner throughout that is going to even enhance your success here, right? Like telling someone, whether it's your spouse, your sister, your mom, a coworker, even a client, hey, hold me accountable. You said I needed to get this back to you by this time. Feel free to hold me accountable on that. Call me out if I don't move forward with it. And I mean, just put yourself out there and I guarantee you will get it done.
Do you think that people should intentionally make or practice, maybe would be a better word, making small decisions faster to kind of build that muscle to where they feel more confident in making bigger decisions? I don't want to say quicker, but just like feeling more confident in making big decisions.
Yeah, we talk about this inside of the program too, especially when it comes to habits of like saying no or having boundaries around things, like practice these small things. Something that comes to me first, there's two things I'll share. The first one is Marie Kondo. She was like really popular there for a while around like clearing the clutter in the house. And I remember an episode where, I think she did this in every episode actually, but she'd pull a shirt out and the person had to say, did a feeling come up for you that was good or was it bad? And if it was good and sentimental, then fine, we'll keep it. But if it didn't bring anything up for you, do you actually use it? Then throw it in the no pile and just move on. Like just make the decision, yes or no. I do the same thing with my son and I'm starting to help him practice this now too, right? And I think that that's important is sharing these. This is legacy too, right? Like teaching the next generation decision making, teaching the next generation how to think critically is also part of the legacy package, in my opinion, not necessarily the land or the livestock or the whatever. But I'm starting him young of like, let's just go in your toy box. We just did this. It's almost Christmas time at this point of recording. And before we get all these new toys in, we're going to go through our toy box and I'll hold up one item and I'll say, keep or donate. And he has to make the decision right then and there on the fly, keep or donate. And if he starts to freak out and panic, because some toys will do that, I'll say, okay, we'll keep it for now. We can decide on that one next time. Or if he starts to get overwhelmed and he's just like, I don't know, like, I just want to keep them all, which does happen. We've got 2 in our donate pile and 80 in our keep pile. I'll say, okay, let's go take a break and we'll go, do something that is totally irrelevant to the donating process. And then we'll come back to it. And sometimes we have to give it a break for a couple of weeks, but it's really good for him to say, is this a keep or a donate? Is this a yes or a no? And sometimes you need those rapid fire things to just, really test yourself of, does this actually mean anything to me? And if it does, you still have the memory of it, right? Like we can take a picture of you playing with this toy, and then in the future, in 20 years, you can remember back at this moment. You don't actually have to keep Buzz Lightyear, right? Like we don't actually need him anymore. So that's another way to think about it. And then another approach I was going to share is around James Clear, right? Like he talks about habits having 4 laws to make or to break. So the 4 laws would be like, make it invisible, make it easy, make it attractive. Oh my gosh, I just forgot the last one, but you get the idea. And you can either make it easy or make it difficult. And I think the same thing can be said with your decision making of, if this is something that is easy for you, say yes to your yeses. If it's something that's a no, then that's when it deserves more energy, but don't waver on your yeses either.
Well, and I love the idea that you brought up kids, because parenting is definitely something like we as parents want to teach our children to, be better versions of us. But I also really liken it to leadership. When you are in a role and you have people below you, parenting and leadership really do go hand in hand. And so I think it's also very important in keeping in mind the type of language that we're using. When somebody on our team makes a decision, your follow-up should not be, well, that's not the decision I would make. When you say things like that, you are chipping away at their confidence. You are making them second guess themselves. You really have to come at those types of occurrences based on, okay, how can I continue to help build confidence, help build their decision-making tool? Again, like I said, some of the best lessons are the ones we unfortunately learn the hard way. I have made decisions and I can dang sure tell you I will not make that decision again because I learned from that. And so I think that there is a very fine line there in continuing to be good leaders, knowing that, again, whether it's our kids, whether it's the people that we work with alongside, how are we speaking to them in a way that is going to continue to curate and build confidence within them?
I love how you said like leadership conversations and parenting, they're so similar. And with my one-on-one coaching clients all the time, if I'm like trying to help them with their employees, I'm like, okay, so like, let's use an example of something that your kid did, right? Because this is how you would train and teach your child. Let's do the same concept, not talk to our employees like children, but the same slowing down and just ensuring that they're understanding, right? I also use this assessment called the working genius. And I think we've talked about this before of like sometimes people just have the discernment as a natural go-to. Like some people are just naturally gifted at making decisions and being able to connect dots and see the bigger picture. Whereas some other people, they just can't. And so if decision making fatigue is a real thing for you, which it is, if that's an area you're struggling, find the discerner in your life and maybe put that on them and say, can you help me make this decision? Right? Like, I'm not able to see this. And I think that that's a part of leadership that a lot of people overlook too, is we think as leaders, we have to be able to solve all the problems. We have to know all of the answers. And I think true leadership is also knowing your resources and who to lean on and who to delegate out to and who to bring in for another perspective. And so if decision making or discernment isn't a easy thing for you, who in your life can help you work through this?
Oh, such solid, solid advice. If listeners take nothing else from this conversation, what is the one thing that you want them to know about just becoming a confident decision maker or action taker?
I had a coach tell me one time when I was really struggling with confidence, and I wouldn't say rock bottom, but pretty darn close to rock bottom. And I was having issues at home. I was having issues at work. I was having issues internally. I was a freaking mess. And I was like, I just don't feel confident. I feel like no matter what I do, I'm going to screw up. Nothing. I mean, I was total victim mentality. And she had said, make a decision and have your back on it. So if there was one thing that I could leave you with, whether you're making decisions, whether you're trying to help somebody else make a decision, make the decision and have your back on it.
I love that. That is a perfect way to move into our rapid fire round. What do you hope people remember most about you?
What do I hope people remember most about me? I struggle with this one a lot because part of me wants people to remember me as somebody who really poured into my family and my kids. And then I've also got this other part of me who are like, you made a difference in the ag industry. I do have a really hard time narrowing down that answer. But at the end of the day, I want people to know that she didn't just try, she did. And that's something that my husband and I talk about all the time. Like, hey, I want to just say, like, good job for doing that. And he's like, well, I'm trying, and it's like, no, you're not trying, you're doing. That matters. And so if anybody, could remember me, maybe that needs to go on my headstone of like, she didn't just try, she did. Like, I'd be fine with that.
I think that is fabulous. I love that. What is a non-negotiable in your life?
Ooh, I am not the kind of person that says, I'm going to die on this hill. You won't hear that out of my mouth. You will not hear, I will die on this hill, because like I used to be a real diehard, like, nope, this is my decision and you're not going to change my mind. And then I did all this personal growth stuff. And now my mind is changing constantly. So I think my non-negotiable would be the only thing I would ever die on a hill for would be Jesus.
That is a very solid answer. If you were a professional athlete, what would your walk-up song be?
Part of me thinks it should be Crazy Train by Ozzy Osbourne.
I think that that's a great song. My kids,
All
they
aboard.
love that. Yeah, as soon as that comes on, they instantly know, like, what is coming next. They love that.
Let's go.
What's the smartest thing someone's ever told you?
Mm. My mom said this to me all growing up. Pick your battles.
That is very solid advice. Again, whether you are in leadership, whether you are a parent, in friendships, relationships, you really truly cannot have your cake and eat it too. You got to pick your battles. Okay, final question for you, except you're going to get two of them. One, let's talk about favorite things. Do you have a favorite podcast or a book, a program, maybe a life hack, something that's just changed your life that you want more people to know about? That's question number one.
Okay. Lately, I have not been diving into leadership, personal development, professional development stuff. Like, that has been taking the back burner. The thing that I have been spending the majority of my time digesting has been around, how can I be a better parent? And I think the reason for that, not only because I'm homeschooling now and I have children who I need to behave a certain way throughout the day, otherwise mama's going to go crazy, literally all aboard, right? But I think it's also because, again, legacy to me has been redefined over the last couple of years. And if there was anything that I want my kids to take away from me, I don't want it to be, the crystal up in the curio cabinet. I want it to be good values and strong faith and knowing how to be a good human and serving other people. And so that starts at home. And I hear all the time on LinkedIn or on social media around, like, how do we get this next generation to act right and all the things. Like, it starts at home. And so this is my small contribution to helping make the next generation of agriculture something worth talking about.
In the words of Mother Teresa, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. I firmly believe in that. Okay, I said that this was a two-part question. One of the elements that I ask, like if you have a favorite of, is a program. Let's talk about AgriMinds. If somebody is interested just in learning more, in joining 2026, I know you guys have a lot in this year on the horizon. So give us the details on all of that.
Yeah. So to provide a little bit of context, there's a couple of pillars under the AgriMinds umbrella. So the key signature thing that I offer is called AgriMinds Live, which is a group coaching / mentorship and mastermind program. So people will come in, there's a 12-week curriculum that we go through, but there is also time to build community, mastermind, get life coaching, etc. That's called AgriMinds Live. Then there's AgriMinds Essential, which is a self-paced virtual version of that that's very bite-sized. I'm talking like 5 to 10 minutes tops of content that you digest weekly, and that can be done at your own pace. So it's dripped out over 12 weeks, but you can move through it when it makes sense for you and you have access to it until I decide one day I want to shut it off in several years. But you basically can revisit it as many times as you want to. It can be done in a combine or a tractor or in the truck or at home at night, right? Like you don't have to be plugged in a specific time in a Zoom. And so I think that that's really cool to offer. There's also the personal path, AgriMinds, the personal path, which is basically what we cover in AgriMinds Live, but it's just me and you. And so we're going to go through the framework over 8 weeks, and we will talk about how this applies specifically to you. What are the things you are struggling with? And all my time and attention is dedicated to you through that 8 weeks. And then the really fun part is the AgriMinds Summit, which is the 2-day in-person event, March 2026, where we're all gathering in Ohio to go through some really cool topics that are all about the human in agriculture, the person, not necessarily the job or the title. And so I'm really excited about this. Again, to some of the things we talked about earlier, this is something that I wish that I had earlier on in my career. And honestly, the topics that we're going through are things that I want to learn more about. And so I'm going to be right there in the audience too, learning alongside attendees, not up there the entire time talking. I will do one presentation, but I've got other speakers coming in talking about mindset, talking about burnout and worthiness and confidence. And we're going to be doing some nervous system regulation and all these things that I think some people consider woo-woo, but I think it is starting to be a little bit more accepted in the ag industry of like, oh, okay, you're telling me if I just learn how to breathe a little bit better, I'll be able to sleep more soundly. I'll be calmer with my wife. I'll be able to think clearer at work. Yes, that's what I'm telling you. And we're going to be going through that, and it's going to be so, so good. And I'm really excited about that. So that's what we've got so far. There's a couple other things that I'm working on behind the scenes that aren't quite ready to be talked about out loud. So you'll have to just hang tight for that. But there's some really cool stuff coming in the works.
Kacee, if anybody wants to go sign up for the summit, go learn more about what you do, get in AgriMinds Live, where can they find you?
Yeah, so I'm sure you'll put a link in the show notes to the summit or to anything like this, but kaceebohle.com is where you can find information about the summit, about all the different opportunities to join a program or to do coaching. But I'm also pretty active on LinkedIn and Instagram. LinkedIn, you can just find me at Kacee Bohle, or AgriMinds has its own business page. And then Instagram is Ag Coach Kacee.
I love that. Kay, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I hope people leave this episode just feeling more empowered to make a decision. And I will also tell you, make it today. Use this as fuel to make yourself just move forward on a decision, whatever it is that you have been analyzing, thinking about. No, I need to do that, but I just don't really just make the decision today. And then after that, you can come back next week with a brand new episode of Leaders of the West. Also, when you make your decision, I want to hear about it online. So please, whatever it is, once you've made your decision, come tell me about it over on Instagram. I want to hear about it. Thank you guys for being here. We'll see you next week. If you loved this episode, do us a favor and share it with someone else who might find just as much value in it as you did. We're on a mission to continue to grow and strengthen the future of agriculture and Western industries, and you spreading the word helps us make more of a positive impact. It also makes a big difference when you take a minute to go rate and review the show. We can't thank you enough for listening, for sharing, and for loving Ag and Western as much as we do. We'll see you back here for our next episode.